Hey gang, I know I'm not at school today, so I need you to pay attention to the following. On the left side of the board, I have a little T chart, and the T chart shows you the pros and cons of Portuguese exploration and Spanish exploration. I need you guys to copy those things down in your notes. That way, you know the differences and the pros and cons of the Portuguese and Spanish exploration. Now, just to put in perspective, as you're looking at this stuff on the left side of the board, think to yourself, is this a positive or a negative? Is this a pro or a con? And who is this a pro or a con for? Now, we read about Portugal and we took a look at some of the things that they had done. And obviously, one of the big negatives is that they introduced the racial slave trade. So we obviously see that race-based slavery is introduced by the Portuguese, and this is not good because we obviously now see that the Europeans are now creating a slavery system. So even though it benefits them financially and they can grow a lot of crops in the Western Hemisphere, they're uprooting and stealing, and millions of Africans are dying. So this is a negative. Then we also read a little bit about Christopher Columbus and Spanish exploration. And we watched a video about Christopher Columbus and whether or not he should be celebrated or whether or not he should be vilified. So that's something to think about. Now you'll notice on the right side of the board, or on the right column on the left side of the board, is details about the Columbian Exchange. We watched this video very briefly in class, but the big thing is I want you to read through the document and read this and see. Notice the number of things that came from Europe and Africa that went to the Americas, such as diseases and animals and certain crops. And then think about the crops that went from the Americas to Europe. Obviously, the diseases going from Europe to the Americas is a negative impact because it killed between 50 and 90% of the natives. But then if you think about it, you think about all the different livestock and all the different plants that come over to the Western Hemisphere, you have that much more food and plants that are going to change diets. And we live in that world today. Now, again, it's kind of crazy to think that turkeys and potatoes and tomatoes and corn had never been in Europe before prior to the Columbian Exchange. Again, the Columbian Exchange is it's the transfer of goods that went from Europe to Africa to the Americas and then back to Europe. So I want you to read through this on your own so that way you can see it. And then there are other impacts of the Columbian Exchange. Actually, it would be a good idea too if you actually watch this video on the Columbian Exchange. You watch it in its entirety. I know that John Green speaks pretty fast, but you should be able to pick up on a couple of things that he says are good or bad things about the Columbian Exchange. So I suggest you watch that. Now, another thing that happened in the Spanish is a man named Ferdinand Magellan. Ferdinand Magellan was actually the first person to circumnavigate the entire world. He realized that you could not only just go to the Southern America area from Europe, but that you could actually go around South America and eventually make your way to Asia. So literally the arrows that we see is Ferdinand Magellan's trip from 1520 to 1522. And it was interesting because what Ferdinand Magellan really did was he showed, yes, you can literally go around the entire world in a ship. And that changed trade routes and maps forever. So without Ferdinand Magellan and his Spanish voyages, he introduced the concept of truly circumnavigating the world or going around the entire world. I want you to read through this part about Spanish and the Spanish conquest and Hernan Cortez and what he had done to the Aztecs. And I want you to read through the rest of this and then think about the following. Were there more positive or negative effects of the Age of Exploration? Next, I want you to read through the following pages in the doc about Bartolomé Las Casas. And I want you to think about the following questions. Who was Las Casas? What made Las Casas change his mind about exploration? What were Las Casas' arguments about Indian slavery and European conquest over the Indians? And then think about this. Was the age of exploration more of an age of exploration, or was it an age of invasion and conquering? That's a question you really need to think about. Was it more of an age of European exploration, or was it more of an era of European exploration and invasion and conquering? So you'll read through this document about Las Casas, and then it'll finally take you to this, the Age of Exploration writing assignment. Now that we've read about European exploration and the effects of exploration and the pros and cons of exploration and the life of Las Casas, we are now going to answer the following question. You have a paper to write. You're going to have to explain 2 positive and 2 negative effects of European exploration. This paper will be no longer than 2 pages typed MLA format, 12 font, Times New Roman, double-spaced, 1-inch margins. What you're going to do is you're going to answer this question in blue in your 2 pages. Your first paragraph, which is your introduction, will be 3 to 5 sentences. Get to the point. Don't give me a bunch of fluff. Your topic sentence tells me what the paper is about. Sentence number 2 answers the question, what enabled or allowed or made possible Europeans the ability to explore the world? Your third sentence is, why did Europeans explore the world? What were they trying to do? And then your thesis statement will come at the end, and it says, these were the 2 positive and 2 negative effects of European exploration. Now, if you think about it, it says 2 positive and 2 negative effects of European exploration. You can mention 2 positive and 2 negative things for the Europeans. You could mention 2 positive, 2 negatives of the Native Americans. You could say that the Europeans had positive effects and there were negative effects for Africans who were enslaved, or there were negative effects for the Native Americans who were conquered. I don't have a preference. In fact, you really should think about that it's not just the Europeans who had positive effects. There were negative effects by the Europeans onto other people. Your paragraphs will talk about European exploration. You'll have at least 1 paragraph that tells me about the positive effects. If you want, you could do a paragraph for each positive. You could say, the Europeans had this effect on the world. Here's my 1 paragraph about positive. And then you could do the same thing for another positive. And then you need at least a minimum 1 paragraph that explains the negative. Your last paragraph is your conclusion. You'll restate your thesis and tell me whether you think the age of exploration had a more positive or more negative impact on the world. Think about the following things. What impact did the Europeans have on the people they encountered? Was the impact that the Europeans had on the world more positive, more negative? Did it benefit Europeans more? Did it benefit Africans? Did it benefit Native Americans? Who did it hurt? Now, when you're writing your paper, think about the following things and read through this, okay? If you have any questions about how to write the paper, you can hold off and ask me in class later. But I want you to read through this so you can see this is how we write a paper. If you have any questions, you can reach out, but pay attention to this. And if you're not sure as to how to start writing the paper, that's fine. But create a T-chart then, at minimum, and have a T-chart that lists as many positives on one side and as many negatives on the other side as you can think of. And then try to do that for the Europeans, the Africans, and the Native Americans. And then also, I want you to write down a couple of things about how we live in the world of the Columbian Exchange and how we today are directly impacted by the European age of exploration. If you're finished with the paper, or if you're struggling with the paper, it's not a big deal. You can start working on the study guide for the midterm. I'll do my best to be in school tomorrow. Have a great rest of the day, gang. I appreciate you doing the work, and I'll see you soon. Be good.